The Galactic Conclave exiled the only human they ever respected. They thought she was the problem. They were wrong. She was the ceiling. And when they tore her out, the whole building came down. The Galactic Conclave met on Cytheris, a ring-shaped station orbiting a dead star built as neutral ground 200 years ago when the first alliance was signed. The chamber was perfect, curved, symmetrical. Every species had their place, every species except one. Humans sat at the bottom, always the bottom. Not because they were the youngest, not because they were the weakest, but because 200 years ago, when the Treaty of Cytheris was drafted, they had volunteered for that seat, the last chair, the one closest to the door. They called it humility. The aliens called it knowing your place. Diplomat Lena Soreth had occupied that chair for 73 years. She had personally negotiated 14 treaty renewals. She had resolved the Vulathi-Kathrani border crisis in an afternoon, a conflict that had stalled for 6 years before she walked into the room. She had talked a Varathi warfleet out of bombarding a colony world by citing a single paragraph of maritime law that no one else remembered existed. She was the only human the alien species respected, and that was the problem. The Kathrani were tall, bioluminescent, ancient. They had been the first species to join the Alliance, and they had never forgiven humanity for being the species that held it together. The Kathrani Primarch, a creature named Auveth, whose light pulsed in slow, authoritative rhythms, rose from his seat on the second tier and addressed the conclave. Esteemed members, we present findings regarding the conduct of the Earth delegation over the past 200 years. He projected a series of documents onto the central display. Trade route allocations, tariff modifications, subsections of the Treaty of Cytheris, annotated with human signatures. The data showed a pattern. Every major trade route in the Alliance had been, at some point, adjusted, rerouted, or restructured with Earth's input. Every one, and every adjustment had marginally favored human commerce. The chamber murmured. The evidence looked damning. Lena Soreth watched from her chair at the bottom. She didn't stand. She didn't object. She just watched, because she had written every single one of those adjustments herself. And she knew something the Kathrani didn't. Every adjustment that favored human commerce also stabilized a trade route that would have collapsed without it. The favors were real, but so was the work. She waited for the vote. It came quickly. The Kathrani proposed exile, not of humanity, but of their diplomat, a targeted removal. Clean, precise, remove the human influence, preserve the alliance. That was the pitch. The conclave voted. 31 in favor, 9 against, 7 abstaining. Lena Soreth stood, slowly. She was 73 years old, and her knees weren't what they used to be. But she stood like someone who had been expecting this moment for a very long time. She removed her diplomat sash, the blue and silver band she'd worn for 73 years, the one that marked her as the conclave's chief mediator. She folded it carefully, placed it on her chair. Then she walked toward the door. She was almost through when she stopped. Turned, looked back at the chamber. "You didn't exile me," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You exiled the last person who remembers why this alliance was built. And you'll find I was the only thing holding the ceiling up." The door closed behind her. The chamber was silent for exactly 4 seconds. Then the Kathrani Primarch resumed the session as if nothing had happened. "The motion carries. We will proceed with the appointment of a new mediation council." Nothing had changed. Yet, within a month, 3 border disputes between the Kathrani and the Vulathi nearly became wars. Not minor skirmishes, full mobilization events, fleet movements, threat broadcasts, the exact kind of conflict Lena Soreth would have resolved in an afternoon. The conclave sent 3 mediators, a Kathrani jurist, a Varathi arbiter, a joint commission from the minor species bloc. All 3 failed. The Kathrani jurist cited legal precedent. The Vulathi left the room. The Varathi arbiter proposed a compromise. Both sides rejected it. The Joint Commission produced a 400-page report. No one read it. What none of them understood, what Lena had understood, was that these disputes weren't about territory or resources. They were about trust, and trust isn't built with precedent. It's built with a person who has been in the room long enough to remember what both sides said the last time, and the time before that, and the time before that. Lena Soreth had 73 years of institutional memory. The Kethrani jurist had a law degree. The alliance was leaking. Not dramatically, not yet, but the pressure was dropping. Meanwhile, humanity was quietly asked to step back from conclave proceedings. Not formally, not a vote, just not invited. The meeting notices stopped arriving. The diplomatic channels went quiet. Earth's formal requests for updates were acknowledged with automated replies. Humans were no longer in the room, and the room was getting smaller. What the Conclave didn't know, what Lena Soreth had never told anyone, was that she hadn't spent 73 years just making friends. She'd spent 73 years building a self-destruct button. On Earth, in a briefing room 3 kilometers below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Chen reviewed a file marked Project ARBITER. He was a cold man, not cruel, cold, the kind of cold that comes from spending 40 years calculating risks and never once being surprised by an outcome. His face didn't move much. His eyes missed nothing. Project ARBITER was Lena's creation. She had designed it 40 years ago, with Chen's predecessor, as a contingency for exactly this scenario. What if the Alliance turned on its architects? What if the piece was used as a weapon against the people who built it? The answer was 30 stealth carrier groups, positioned at every major trade route the Alliance depended on, maintained for 200 years by human engineering crews who thought they were running deep space relay stations. Never activated, never revealed, never once used. Lena's philosophy had been simple: power you never use is the most powerful power of all. Chen read the file, closed it, opened a secure channel to his second-in-command, Captain Yara Osei. She spent 73 years making friends, so we'd never need guns, Chen said. They just proved her experiment over. Osei was younger, sharper in some ways, softer in others. She'd served under Chen for 6 years and still couldn't tell when he was angry. "Admiral," she said carefully, "what are we doing?" Chen looked at the file one more time. "We're showing them what she was protecting them from. Humanity didn't attack. They didn't threaten. They didn't posture. They didn't send a fleet or a warning or a demand. They sent a diplomatic communique. Not through conclave channels. Humans had been removed from those. Through direct, individual channels. One message to every species in the Alliance, delivered simultaneously to their homeworld communication arrays. The message was 17 pages long. It cited the Treaty of Cytheris. Specifically, it cited Article 7, Section 3, a clause so obscure that most alien legal scholars assumed it was a formatting error. Article 7, Section 3. Any founding species may invoke a trade route review upon demonstration of strategic interest. Such review grants the invoking species temporary custodial authority over the reviewed route's access protocols, toll structures, and priority scheduling. The message was polite, professional, impeccably formatted. Its meaning was devastating, because every major trade route in the Alliance, every single one, had been built, funded, and maintained by human engineering. For 200 years, the alien species had used them, depended on them, built their economies around them, but they had never built them. The United Earth government hereby invokes trade route review on all 12 primary Alliance trade routes, effective immediately. Translation: humanity built the roads, humanity maintained the roads. And the treaty, the very treaty the Conclave claimed to uphold, gave the builders the right to control access, not a war move, a legal move. The Kethrani Primarch's response was immediate. He called it an act of economic warfare. He was wrong. It was worse than that. Warfare you can fight. Legal leverage you can only obey, or break the law yourself. The Conclave erupted. The Kethrani demanded the review be reversed. The Vulathi quietly opened back-channel talks with Earth. They had never supported Lena's exile, and they weren't about to bankrupt themselves for Kethrani pride. 3 smaller species started panicking. Their economies depended on these routes. A single week of disrupted trade would cost them more than a decade of military spending. And then a young Kethrani aide, a minor functionary named Cael, barely 30 years old, assigned to the Conclave archives, found something. The original Treaty of Cytheris. The real one. Not the abridged version distributed to member species. The full document, all 2,400 pages, stored in a sealed vault that hadn't been opened in 800 years. He read Article 7, Section 3. Then he read the authorship records. Lena Soreth hadn't altered the treaty. She had written Section 3. She had written it 1,200 years ago, when the Alliance was first formed. She had placed it so deep in the document that no one would find it unless they went looking for it. And she had made sure it was legally airtight. She wasn't just a diplomat. She was a strategist who had spent a millennium building a self-destruct button into the Alliance's foundation, one that would only activate if the Alliance turned on its architects. Cael brought his findings to the Primarch. Auveth read them. His bioluminescence flickered, a Kethrani sign of extreme emotional disturbance. "She planned this," Auveth said. Cael shook his head. "No, Primarch. She planned for the possibility. There's a difference. She hoped it would never be used, but she wasn't naive enough to hope alone. The Kethrani demanded humanity reverse the review or face corrective action. Humanity didn't reverse it. Instead, Admiral Chen did something no human had done in 1,200 years. He showed up at a conclave session. He wasn't invited. He didn't ask permission. He simply walked into the chamber. Tall, still, wearing a uniform that was slightly too formal for the occasion, and stood at the bottom, in Lena's chair. The chamber fell silent. A human hadn't stood in that spot since the exile. Chen didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The acoustics of the conclave chamber were designed so that even a whisper at the bottom could be heard at the top. "Every trade route you depend on," he said, "every supply line, every emergency corridor. We built them, we maintained them, we funded them. For 200 years, we asked nothing in return except that you treat our representative with respect." He paused. Let the silence do its work. "You couldn't manage that." He activated a holographic display. It showed the full Project ARBITER intelligence. Not the military assets, but the infrastructure. The 30 carrier groups, yes, but also the 400 relay stations, the 1,200 maintenance drones, the quantum-entangled communication network that held the trade routes together. All of it human, all of it invisible, all of it running for 1,200 years while the alien species sat in their tiered seats and debated whether humans deserved to be in the room. "We are not threatening you," Chen said. "We are informing you the alliance you depend on is not a structure you built. It is a structure we built, and we can maintain it, or we can step back. Your choice." He left. Didn't wait for a response, didn't need to. On the shuttle back to Earth's delegation ship, Captain Auveth sat across from Chen. She'd been quiet the whole ride. "Admiral," she said finally, "Lena built this to prevent war, not to win one." Chen looked at her. His face, as always, was unreadable. "If we go further," Auveth continued, "we're not honoring her. We're weaponizing her legacy." The shuttle hummed. Stars slid past the viewport. "I know," Chen said. "That's why we stop here." Auveth blinked. "Sir? This was always the plan, Yara. Show them the lever. Let them decide." He leaned back. Lena understood something most soldiers don't. The threat you actually carry out is the one that fails. The threat they believe you'll carry out is the one that works. Auveth stared at him. "And if they call our bluff?" Chen almost smiled, almost. "Then it wasn't a bluff. And they'll find out in about 6 hours when the trade route reviews take effect and their economies start to seize." He wasn't bluffing. He was just patient. The Kethrani Primarch, facing economic collapse and internal rebellion from his own merchant class, was forced to the negotiating table. But he had a condition. "We will negotiate," Auveth announced, "through the Conclave, not directly with Earth." It was a face-saving move. Auveth couldn't be seen negotiating with the species his own faction had exiled. The politics wouldn't allow it. Chen received the message, read it, turned to Auveth. "They want to negotiate through the Conclave." which means they want to negotiate without us in the room. Correct. Chen drafted a response. 3 words. Our representative is Lena Soreth. The Conclave objected. She was exiled. She had no standing. She wasn't even on Cytheris. Chen's reply was 2 words. Then continue. And the review continued, and the trade routes tightened. And the Kethrani merchant fleet, the economic backbone of their entire civilization, began to lose 12% of its throughput per day. The Vulathi broke first, then the Varathi, then the 11 smaller species. One by one, they opened direct channels with Earth, formally inviting Lena Soreth to represent humanity in bilateral negotiations. The Conclave's authority collapsed, not with a vote, not with a declaration. It simply stopped mattering. Its unity was its power, and it no longer had any. Lena Soreth returned to Cytheris on a human diplomatic vessel. She was 74 now. Her hair had gone fully white. She walked slowly, not from weakness, but from the deliberate pace of someone who knows exactly how much time they need. The Kethrani Primarch met her at the chamber entrance. Auveth's bioluminescence was dim, subdued, the slow pulse of a creature who had lost something and was only now beginning to understand its value. Diplomat Soreth, he said. The title was deliberate, an acknowledgement, a concession. Primarch Auveth, she replied. You look tired. The Alliance looks tired, he said. Can you save it? Lena looked at the chamber, the tiered seats, the empty pods, the single chair at the bottom. No, she said, and I won't try. She didn't restore the old Alliance. The old Alliance was a building with a cracked foundation. You don't repair that. You build something new. She called it the Soreth Accord. A mutual defense and trade pact where every species had equal voting power. No arbiters, no mediators who held the ceiling up alone. A rotating mediation council, 5 species, 5-year terms, no species serving consecutive terms. No one species could become indispensable, and no one species could be exiled. She added one clause that no one caught until years later. Clause 47. 3 sentences.
Clause 47. No species may be excluded from proceedings. No species may be denied access to trade routes.
No vote may be taken in the absence of any founding member. It was the same lesson, written into law. They could never do to anyone what they had done to her. The Vulathi signed first, then the Varathi, then the minor species, then, last, grudgingly, with bioluminescent displays that flickered between humiliation and relief, the Kethrani. The Treaty of Cytheris was archived. The Soreth Accord took its place. Lena Soreth sat on a bench outside the old Conclave chamber. The chamber was empty now. Abandoned. The lights had been turned off. The ring-shaped station still orbited the dead star, but it was a museum piece, not a seat of power. Cael found her there, the young Kethrani aide. He was older now, not in years, but in understanding. The archives had done that to him. He sat beside her. They were quiet for a moment. Why did you write Section 3? He asked. Did you always know we'd turn on you? Lena looked at the empty chamber through the viewport. The dead star cast a faint, cold light. I wrote it because I'm human, she said. We don't trust systems, we trust people. And I knew, eventually, you'd replace me with a system. And systems don't have mercy, so I gave you a reason to remember that people matter. Cael absorbed this. 200 years, he said. You waited 200 years to use it. I waited 200 years hoping I'd never have to. She looked at him. That's the part your Primarch never understood. He thought I built a weapon. I built a reminder. The weapon was just in case the reminder didn't work. The dead star shone through the viewport, cold, ancient, indifferent. The Soreth Accord, Cael said, testing the name. Will it last? Lena smiled, a small, tired, honest smile. Nothing lasts, but some things last longer because they're built on truth instead of pride. She stood, her knees protested, she ignored them. The old alliance lasted 200 years because it was built on the idea that one person could hold it together. The Accord is built on the idea that no one should have to. She looked at the empty chamber one last time. Not bad for 74 years. She turned to leave, then stopped. Cael, when they write the history of this, make sure they get one thing right. What's that? It wasn't revenge. It was architecture. She walked away. The cold light of the dead star filled the empty chamber. And somewhere, in 30 positions across the galaxy, stealth carrier groups powered down their systems and returned to their quiet work of maintaining the roads. Not because they were needed, because Lena Soreth had always believed in building things that outlasted the people who broke them. The Soreth Accord lasted 3,000 years. When historians asked why it outlasted the Alliance by nearly 3 times, the answer was always the same. Because this time, they didn't exile the architect. They made her the foundation. And the chair at the bottom of the chamber. It was never filled again. They left it empty, not as a reminder of who was gone, but as a reminder of what happens when you remove the one person who was holding everything together. Some chairs are empty because no one deserves to sit in them. That chair was empty because no one ever could again. If you want more stories where humanity proves that the greatest power isn't strength, it's patience, subscribe to HFY Legends. Hit the bell. The next story is already in the works, and if you were Lena, would you have built the self-destruct button or trusted the Alliance to hold? Let me know in the comments.